Mr. Chairman, my name is David Cook. I represent District 8, which is in the counties of Gila and Pinal in the great state of Arizona. And I am honored to be here with the people setting up at this table. And I am extremely honored to be representing the people of my district to get answers and information today to answer their questions. And Mr. Chairman, I yield the rest of my time to your next guest.
Thank you. I'm Senator-elect Kelly Townsend, and I represent the great district of District 16, which includes Pinal County and Maricopa County. Thank you. I'm here today because what is most important to me is truth. I want to discover what is true here in Arizona. It is most important. And when we have so many things to look at and we're not sure, I thought about what do we do with all of this? And it reminded me of something my pastor said. You go back to what you did at the beginning. At the beginning of this country, we had George Washington, who was known for his honesty. And he told his friend Charles Thurston, truth will ultimately prevail where pains is taken to bring it to light. It may be painful to reach this truth, but we must reach it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here today. I am Brett Roberts, State Representative for Legislative District 11, which is Pinal County and Pima County, the city of Maricopa, Casa Grande, Arizona City, and several others. And I'm happy to be here today to provide take part in providing this forum to hear evidence and give answers that so many people are looking forward to hearing, and whether or not they are answers that you want to hear or they're answers that you don't want to hear, we need answers, and I'm happy to take part in this. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Senator-elect Nancy Bartow, and I am so pleased to be here on behalf of the incredible voters in District 15 who live in North Phoenix primarily, Scottsdale, Cave Creek, Glendale, all in Maricopa County. It is a true honor to be their voice today and to be here on their behalf to listen to the facts, the evidence. Because there's a lack of confidence in our election system at this point in time, in 2020 in Arizona. We're told many times over and over again, ad nauseum, throughout election campaigns, that your vote counts. Get out and vote. Your vote counts. Does it? Arizonans want to know. And that's why we're here, to listen to evidence and testimony and answer that question wherever it leads. We need to restore confidence in our election system, and I look forward to being a participant on behalf of District 15 and all of Arizona to get this information out, hear the evidence, and make sure that we have elections that the people can be confident in for the future. Otherwise, they will not vote in the future. That would be a disaster. But that's where we are today. We have to hear the truth, hear the evidence, hear the testimony, and get to the bottom of the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Leo Biasucci, I represent District 5, which includes Mojave County, La Paz County, everywhere from Lake Havasu City, Kingman, Bullhead, Parker. And, you know, I think all of us can share the same story that we've been receiving thousands of emails a day from constituents. And they want answers, and rightfully so. And this is our job now, is to provide them with whatever evidence that's being presented here today and allowing the people to decide for themselves if they feel our elections were secure and if there was any kind of fraud at all. That's our job as representatives, to give those answers to the people and let them figure it out. So I'm honored to be here on this panel. I'm honored to represent the state of Arizona and District 5, and I look forward to the mayor and the legal team to present what you guys have today. Thank you.
Representative. Senator Allen.
Thank you very much.
I'm Sylvia Allen. I represent District 6, which is the rural heart of Arizona, the most beautiful part of the state, you guys. And I've been so honored to be able to represent this district. It's Navajo County, it's Gila County, it's Yavapai County, Coconino County, all the way to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. So I'm here representing 4 counties. And I have also received hundreds and hundreds of emails from citizens, not only in my district, but all across the state, saying, please, Senator Allen, please listen to what is out there, the testimony that's out there, the different evidence that's being gathered. Please be sure that my vote counted. Please be sure that our elections are safe. And also, as I read the U.S. Constitution, and 10 times I've taken an oath as a political leader to uphold the Constitution of the United States and also our state constitution. What does that really mean? The legislature is the people's house. This is the people's part of government, and it's important that we protect our right to vote. And the legislature, under the Constitution, we're responsible to be sure that our electors that we send from the state to the Electoral College, that we have sent it when we've had an election that has been fair and correct and legal. So I'm very pleased to be here today, and thank you to everyone that's worked so hard to put this together. And I am hoping that what we learned today, we'll pay attention, you guys, and that we will go forward and we'll be sure that we can correct the problems that have taken place. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Senator David Gowan. I'm from Legislative District 14, the rural Arizona. I mean, we're actually the heart of rural Arizona.
No.
Right, sorry, Sylvia. Actually, so I represent Cochise counties, Graham, Greenlee, and East Pima, actually. So I got a little bit of Pima in there. Anybody from that region? So where's my clapping? I mean, I heard the clapping for the others. There we go. Thank you. You know, I want to thank Mayor Giuliani for coming in and with his team and preparing to show us some evidence of what might be going on out there with fraud. And hopefully this leads to something big here that we see coming up, either by fixing something or actually allowing us to go in and see the issues at hand so we can actually fix what's going on. You know, that's what we are as a legislature. We're your body, right? So we are what you would consider closest to the people. And through that, we need to be able to do the process that allows the people to be confident in their elections. So that's why I'm proud to be here, and I'm happy that we've been invited to this and willing to listen and learn. So thank you.
I'm Sonny Borelli. I'm the Senate Majority Whip. My legislative district is District 5. I represent Mojave and La Paz County, which represents 3/4 of the west coast of Arizona, away from the left coast. So yes, and I can see California from my house. But my colleagues, their comments, I can't say more than other than we are here for clarity and transparency. And I'm Sonny Borelli, and I approve their messages. Thank you.
Facts are stubborn things. They're barriers for deceit to overcome. The purpose of this public hearing, an inquiry into the integrity of the election just passed, is to provide a forum where no others have been permitted for the President's litigation team to present the evidence and testimony that questions of integrity arise out of the 2020 election. We are caught between the desire to trust the process and the suspicion that it has failed the people of Arizona and potentially the people of our sister states. If there is voter disenfranchisement, we must identify its source and eradicate it as we would with any disease. Much has been made of the lack of formality of this hearing, and that it is not being held in the House or the Senate hearing room, or that there are not sworn witnesses, or even that there is potential for hearsay to be portrayed as legitimate testimony. The members on this panel were not elected to appoint or appointed by other officials, but by our constituents, to whom we are ultimately accountable, each one of us, ultimately accountable, under our Republican form of government. The goal of this hearing is to provide an objective forum for constituents to hear testimony and see evidence that supports or refutes allegations that the 2020 general election is legitimate or illegitimate. After all, we still live under a form of government that is dependent upon the consent of the governed. Under Article 2, Section 1, quote, "Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in Congress." And under Article 6, the Constitution, the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all the treaties made which shall be made under that authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And finally, under Article 4, Section 4, the Guarantee Clause, we are all guaranteed, each state, a republican form of government, the foundation of which is self-governance through free and fair elections, accurately reflecting the will of the people. We are not here to do anything more than to receive facts as witnesses know them through testimony and evidence. We are not here to judge the people making the decisions that lead to the facts provided as evidence. There are some who demand that witnesses swear an oath and others who may dismiss the testimony presented. In the end, the people of the state of Arizona demand, and frankly, are entitled to know whether their trust has been violated and if they should seek redress for their grievances in the legislature or the courts. From the material presented in this inquiry, I expect that the panel will generate from the consumption of the House and Senate for the consumption of the House and Senate membership, and as matter of public record, a report on the proceedings and a video archive that may be used as evidence of this proceeding. With that, Mayor Giuliani, please proceed.
Representative Fincham, distinguished senators and representatives, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to be heard. It's been difficult getting an opportunity to be heard. It shouldn't be. It's America, after all. And our side of the story is legitimate. Our side of the story needs to be heard. And it's been uniformly censored by big tech, big media, the crooked Democrats, and basically people who are saying, don't show us the facts. We've decided already that this is a free and fair election. It was done perfectly. Please don't interrupt that narrative with the truth. Well, we're going to interrupt that narrative this morning with the truth. I have with me Jenna Ellis, who's my co-counsel, representing the President of the United States, and others on our team who have helped put this together. They'll be testifying. And again, I want to thank you for your courage in doing this. I don't think most people realize the kind of harassment, threats, horrible things that are said to you and your family because you're doing this. And again, I emphasize, we've let something really go wrong in this country when that happens. Some of you are old enough and some of you are not old enough to remember the McCarthy era. Well, I call this the McCarthy era on steroids. People being actually fired from their jobs. We had a lawyer who was handling one of our major cases. His very distinguished law firm, can't be really much of a law firm, said that he couldn't remain with his law firm if he represented the President of the United States. If that isn't censorship, if that isn't a form of despotism and distortion of the values of our country, I don't know what is. It started before. It's been going on for some time, like that kind of despotism and authoritarianism. It always starts slowly. You could see it in things done 10, 12 years ago. I think the pandemic released the tendencies of left-wing, socialist-leaning, socialist governors, congressmen, senators, to move to where socialism always moves to. In the history of socialism, which is an old idea, not a new idea, authoritarianism is always the end result. Because when the government controls property, the government controls. And it doesn't want to be interrupted by the stupid ideas of the dumb people of the country. The elite know better. Boy, doesn't that sound like America today? I mean, that was Russia, that was China, that is China. That was Poland, that was Bulgaria, that was East Berlin. Gosh, I thought we fought that and got rid of it. Never thought I'd see it in America. It's in America. It began with the revelation of the hard drive that proves substantial, major crimes on behalf of the Biden family. Censored, not allowed to be shown, not allowed on television, not allowed in the newspapers. Just, we don't want to see the facts, even though they may point out millions and millions of dollars going to a vice president from China, Russia, Ukraine, Romania. Oh, I can't remember all the places. Highly unusual for a vice president to become a multimillionaire while he's sitting in the office of vice president. But it happened, and he's the candidate of the Democratic Party right now. That was covered up. As soon as this election moved into the questionable stage, same practice was used. Cover it up, cover it up, cover it up. Big tech, big media, crooked Democratic leaders, big business that profits from the system the way it operates right now. Their desire is to make country not America first, but wherever America should be put so they can make a profit. We could be third, we could be fifth, we could be non-existent as long as they're making a profit. They have no sense of how important this country is to the, really, to the survival of the world as a decent place. There is no other country that puts its men and women's lives at risk to save other people. That country doesn't exist on earth. It's us. And if we destroy the essential nature of this country, the world's in for a terrible period of time. Well, specifically to this election was the subject of a conspiracy that goes back before the election. A conspiracy that was hatched by the crooked leaders of the Democratic Party. And let me say this to all Democrats. 99% of Democrats are just as honest, just as good, just as decent as Republicans. They may not be as correct on the policies, but we can forgive that. Some of my best friends and relatives are Democrats, and they're not correct on the policies. They believe the same thing about me. But they don't cheat, they don't steal votes, they don't sell public office. The very, very top of the Democratic Party has been corrupted badly since Clinton, and it's carrying itself through, and it hasn't been exercised. The head hasn't been cut off yet of that corruption. This conspiracy isn't limited to, but as you hear the testimony, I think you'll figure it out, just like the people in Pennsylvania, and later in the week, the people in Michigan. It centers around the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots. We've been warned for 20 years that going to major mail-in ballots as a way of doing our elections will be fraught with tremendous fraud. They're very dangerous. It's almost impossible for even semi-crooked politicians to resist the temptation to use it for ballot stuffing. We were warned by President Jimmy Carter. We were warned by former Secretary of State Jim Baker in a report, very, very consequential report. They said we should never do it. And if we do it, it should be extremely limited to the real absentee situations like we have done in the past. We were warned by Justice Souter in the Supreme Court, warned by many, many experts, Republican and Democrat. Democrats used to be against mail-in ballots, like they were against everything else until President Trump was for it, which gives you a sense they're not thinking about the country. They're thinking about competitive advantage, getting their power back, serving their greed and for power and money. So when they saw the mail-in ballot situation, they said, wow, we could change an election in the past, like they did in Chicago in 1960 with Governor Mayor Daley, like they did in Florida or tried to do just last year in Florida by turning the votes in Broward and Palm Beach County, holding them back for 2 weeks and seeing if they could get enough absentee ballots made up. They couldn't get there. They couldn't get there because there were only like 300,000 or 400,000 absentee ballots. You can't expand it to 1 million. But when you have 2.5 million mail-in ballots, you can expand it to 3 million. or 3.2 million, or you can count it 4 or 5 times in the machine. There's plenty of room for cheating, which is why they slowed it down. So you're in it with other states. It's not just Arizona that has been conned, and the people of Arizona taken advantage of, and their right to vote taken away from them. It's the people of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Georgia, and Arizona that we know of. And if your right to vote has been taken away, so is mine. We have an illegitimate election. We have demonstrably wrong numbers in those states. In your state, a lot of the fraud had to do with the mail-in system, as it did in other places. Your state's a little bit different than Michigan and Pennsylvania. Your state, it wasn't full and complete shutout of all Republicans in seeing mail-in ballots and ballots that were in dispute. But it was significant. A significant number of these witnesses were shut out when the important determination was being made, is this ballot valid or isn't it? When you make that determination, as a matter of law in almost every state in the country, and just as a matter of due process and fairness, we'd all agree both parties should get to see it. That's the last time you get to check the validity of the ballot. That's why mail-in ballots are different. We can go back to the machines and we can study the machines. Maybe we can pick up the fraud and the evidence of it, because there's traces left in it. But once the envelope is separated from the ballot, gone forever. You will never know how to connect the fraud, which is why President Carter and Jimmy Baker said, it's a field day for fraud. The way you accomplish the fraud is you don't have an independent party or a Republican. If you're going to cheat the Republicans, you don't have him in the room so he can object to it and point it out. Look, this is the same handwriting on 12 ballots. Oh, they didn't fill out the envelope. They just filled out the ballot. Or this seems like it was done by a machine. Those are the things you can object to. So in probably at least 100,000 situations in Maricopa County alone, and Pima, you did not have the opportunity to do that. Those votes should be declared null and void. You also, in addition, however, had your own variations, as the other states did. So the key fraud is the mail-in ballot. That was the backup in case they fell too far behind. That's why they cut off the vote at midnight, 1 o'clock, when President Trump was getting too far ahead, particularly in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and also in Pennsylvania. So they cut off the vote. He was getting up to 800,000 in Pennsylvania, 300,000 in Michigan. He was even further ahead in Wisconsin. They cut off the vote. They turned things off. They chased everybody out. And then it's not your concern, except for the fact that you got to look at this somewhat in total. They started bringing in false ballots. We have 3 witnesses to 100,000 of those ballots being brought in at 4:30 in the morning in Detroit with no Republicans around that they knew of. Luckily, we had 2 that stayed behind and a Dominion employee who was willing to be honest. Not all of them are honest. So the point of that is you're part of this fraud. You also had numerous situations of your workers, your citizens, observing the poll officials helping people vote to the point of telling them who to vote for. Clear fraud. You have situations of poll workers being observed changing votes, taking ambiguous votes and making sure they were cast for Biden. And you have situations of stuffing the ballot box. And we will try to quantify those. Those are harder to quantify. But the ones involving the exclusion of observers are quantifiable, and that's 100,000. So let me spend just 1 minute, and then we'll get our witnesses out, on Dominion. Dominion is a foreign company. It's a Canadian company. It has an office in America, but it's a foreign company. Question number 1. I have to believe the people of Arizona had no idea a foreign company was counting their vote. I guarantee you they didn't, because the people in New York did. I didn't. I find that outrageous. We can't get an American company that we have complete jurisdiction over to count our votes. Now, did we pick this company here in Arizona without any due diligence? It's not just a foreign company. It's a foreign company that's been in a lot of trouble. In Texas, it was excluded after 2 years of study for being exceedingly incompetent. It screwed up elections in the past. It's well known for having the most porous system of all the companies, meaning it's the easiest one to penetrate. They do little or nothing to protect against hacking. They even explain to some extent in their manual how to get into them, how to manipulate them. And then they have a history going back to the Smartmatic company that actually was formed for the purpose of fixing elections. I don't know who makes the choice in your state of who should be counting your votes, but I know that person either is exceedingly naive or much worse. If this wasn't known to the person making the choice, then you got to change the whole system. Finally, you don't have to wait to change your system. We don't have to endure a phony election and the biggest voter fraud in our history and end up with a tainted election and go down in history as a country that didn't have the courage to deal with it. Go down as the first group of Americans that didn't have the courage to stand up when their freedoms were being taken away. We'd be the first. When I see some of these leaders cower at the idea of doing what the Constitution gives them the power to do, I become very discouraged about, can we really stand up to this invasion on what's been really an invasion on our freedom of religion, our freedom of speech, and now our right to a fair and honest count? That's all we want. I mean, the one thing you will come away with here is the vote as it presently exists is false. It's fraudulent. If they certify it, they are certifying a false statement to the United States of America. Gosh, when I was a prosecutor, that was a federal crime. False statement to the United States in probably the most important matter we have, the selection of our commander-in-chief. I mean, I can tell you where the false statements and where the numbers end up, but that doesn't even matter. It is clear that the numbers are false. It's clear that you have included ballots that weren't properly inspected. It's clear that you're including ballots that were voted by other people. It's clear that you're using machines that have been shown to be totally manipulated in other places, and you won't give us the opportunity to examine those machines. I think anybody who puts their name on that is getting very close to committing a crime. And I think anyone who stands by and lets it happen, maybe they're not committing a crime, but they've lost the sense of what it means that we have to fight to protect our values and our rights, because there are always people, both externally and internally, who want to take them away. And I'm going to ask you to fight. And I'm going to ask you to try to implore the other members of your legislature to stand up to this. Do not be bullied. Do not be frightened. Your political career is worth losing if you can save the right to vote in America. In fact, I may get you a... I can get you a chapter in Profiles in Courage if you do that. Because at times in our history, certain men and women have stepped forward and lost their political career to give us the rights that we have. It's very, very, very similar to losing your life on the battlefield. But that's really what's required right now. Under the Constitution, and we are going to give all of you the memorandum from Professor Eastman, very short and very direct, and you can just go to the third page. It makes it very clear that under Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the document that guides us, we're not guided by your governor. We're not guided by your Secretary of State. We're not guided by Joe Biden. We're not guided by the New York Times. And we're not guided by all those stations that call the election. You know what we're guided by? The Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States says that you, the legislature of Arizona, have the plenary power to regulate the selection of electors in a presidential election. The Supreme Court, in the case that you will see cited there in McPherson, has already answered the question that many ignorant talking heads who really shouldn't be representing anyone because they're incompetent, on television they say, well, you can't change it retrospectively. You can only change it prospectively. Now, I doubt whether they know the difference between retrospectively and prospectively, but I don't want to be mean. Ha. The United States Supreme Court, I think it's in 1892, said you can change it at any time. It's your constitutional power solely. You don't share it with anybody. That clause doesn't say Congress, it doesn't say governor, it doesn't say newspapers, it says the state legislature. And the Supreme Court has said you can change that and take that power back anytime you want to, because it's your power. It's not theirs. Whatever power the governor or the secretary of state thinks they're exercising, it isn't theirs, it's the legislature's. You can take it back. Already decided by the Supreme Court. And then based on evidence, not whim, not political bias, not fear of the media, based on evidence, you can make the determination. What is the right count? Well, how can we get as close to the right count as possible? If we can, then have the courage to select that person to get the electors, because that person won the honest vote. And every dishonest vote disenfranchises the decent people who cast an honest vote. Have the courage to do that. In history, I swear to God, you will be heroes. To half this. If you can't make a determination, then don't certify. That's happened before. If they have screwed this up so badly that you really can't make a determination, then the answer is you do not certify. You can't honestly put your name on a document that sends them the right result. As decent, honest people, that's what you should do. I know I will probably, this is probably the wrong tactic, but we're down near the end. I don't see how any decent, honest person could let this happen. I do not see how any decent, honest person could let this happen. So, with that, I just tell you that the characteristic of human beings that I admire the most, because my heroes are Churchill, Reagan, who's the only president I work for, my hero, and now our new president, who's been my friend for 30 years, and I always knew he'd be a good president, didn't know he'd be a great president. And that's the reason they want him out so badly, because he threatens them with destroying the corrupt system they have been enjoying in Washington since Bill Clinton got there. So, our first witness, Phil, are you ready? Oh, yes, why don't we, do you want to explain this to them? Jenna will explain this to you.
And good morning. Thank you so much to the panel and the Arizona legislature for having us today. This is incredibly important, and I can't underscore enough what the mayor has presented today about the opportunity that you all have to make sure that you use the constitutional provisions that our founders so keenly foresaw would be necessary for today. And this document that we want to present to you is called the Constitutional Authority of the State Legislatures to Choose Electors. We will present to you the facts, the evidence, and the witnesses, so that you can make that determination. But we want you to have the research from someone else who is a constitutional law expert, so that you can hear from someone else besides us that is also affirming the argument that we make today. And this document is very short, but it talks about the McPherson versus Blacker case, which for reporters, I would encourage you all to look it up and maybe write some articles about it. It's 146 US 1, and if you look at page 35, this was an 1892 case. And it says, nonetheless, the constitutional power to decide on the method for choosing electors remains exclusively with state legislatures. The Supreme Court has described the constitutional authority of the state legislatures to determine the manner of choosing electors as plenary. It has even noted that whatever provisions may be made by statute or by the state constitution to choose electors by the people, there is no doubt of the right of the legislature to resume that power at any time. And after you hear the facts and the evidence today, and we will give you this document to read, to be able to cite, and to draw firm grounding on your Article 2, Section 1.2 authority, we are going to ask you as legislators to reclaim that authority and to make sure that the people of Arizona, and indeed the people of the United States of America as a whole, are not disenfranchised by corruption. Federalist 68, Alexander Hamilton talks about the method of choosing our chief magistrate, our president of the United States, and that this safeguard of vesting that authority exclusively with the state legislatures is the safeguard to making sure that corruption does not win. And when the vote of the people and the voice of the people is corrupted through influence, through fraud, then it is the responsibility, the duty, and the obligation, not just the choice, but the actual duty and obligation of the legislature to step in and to make sure that you don't certify false results. You are the last step to make sure that this election is not corrupted. And again, we aren't asking you to step in and overturn an election. We are asking you to step in to make sure that the corruption that occurred here does not stand. And this is exactly why you are on the front lines. So with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll approach and give these to you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Ellis, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Giuliani, are you ready for Colonel Waldron?
Colonel Waldron is our first witness, and I'll ask him a few questions, and then he will make his own presentation, and then, of course, you're perfectly free to ask him any questions that you want. Colonel Waldron, did you have the opportunity to examine any of the Dominion machines that were used in this election?
Yes, sir. Our team looked at some machines and software up in Michigan.
So you know that Dominion machines were used in Maricopa County to count the vote.
Correct.
And they were also used in Michigan.
Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania.
And the machines that you observed, took a look at, were able to examine, were used in the Michigan vote?
Correct.
Now tell us a little about Dominion. Dominion is a company that makes voting machines and voting calculation machines?
That's correct. They've got full end-to-end election, equipment and software.
And the actual software in the Dominion machine, is that Dominion software or is it someone else's?
Dominion is more of a hybrid. Over the years, they've acquired other voting companies, Sequoia and Premier. Sequoia was spun off of SGO, and Premier was spun off of Diebold as a result of the antitrust lawsuit.
Sequoia is the company that was involved in the very serious miscalculation of the Chicago vote in 2007, wasn't it?
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
And they were using Smartmatic software, right?
Correct. And the software, the licensing agreements are pretty well. It's a good spider chart for all of these companies. They all share a common DNA in the software code.
And that company, Smartmatic, their roots are in Venezuela, isn't that right?
Yes, sir. Hugo Chavez was one of the founders, and invested, I think, 28% ownership in the initial setup of the SGO election systems.
And they have been involved in several South American elections that were fixed, altered.
Argentina, Bolivia, Singapore, Venezuela, Italy, several.
And just to simplify things, and we can make this available to you, and we have several witnesses that go back to that period of time who were involved in the vote fixing, who have looked at the vote pattern in Arizona and elsewhere, and said that the pattern matches the way in which Dominion and Smartmatic, companies like that, fix votes. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And what did you, well, let me ask you this other question. One of the former officials of the United States government, a gentleman named Chris Krebs, the former DHS official, shortly after the election, he made an announcement that many of these people refusing to take a look at any evidence are relying on. What did he say?
Mr. Krebs was the director of CISA at DHS, and he basically said that this election was the most secure in history.
The most what?
Most secure in
history. The most secure in history.
And partially that was because the states do an excellent job of validating voter rolls, and that this equipment is not connected to the internet. That was in his.
He said this equipment, which was largely Dominion and several others, is not connected to the internet. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, is Dominion on his council?
Dominion was on Mr. Krebs' Election Security Advisory Council.
And is there, and we'll get to it, we'll witness it, is there substantial evidence, not only here in Arizona, but in other states like what we presented in Pennsylvania, that Dominion was in fact connected to the internet?
Are you referring to information other than the user's manual?
Well, let's go back to the user's manual. Tell them about the user's manual.
The Dominion Suite user's manual is about 1.5 inches thick. My team went back to the user's manual and looked at all the instances where in the user's manual it tells operators to connect the Ethernet cords to the router, and it is the systems are connected to the internet.
And then what evidence do you have that there actually was connection to the internet?
Our teams looked at spider graphs of the Dominion network on election day, and showed the increased web traffic, internet traffic on election day for Dominion servers.
So on election day, Dominion was communicating by internet?
Correct.
Contrary to what Mr. Krebs said or thought?
That is correct.
And tell us now, how do they, take us through how the vote can be modified, and then take us through what you saw in the machine in Michigan, where they did actually modify the vote.
So my background in the military, I started off my career as an air cavalry officer, flying helicopters, counter reconnaissance. Moved later into information warfare as an information operations officer, running psychological operations, computer network operations, deception, operation security, and electronic warfare, special electronic warfare. And our team has been researching this specific issue since August of this year. We are working with another team that's been intently working on this voting machine manipulation for about 2 years. when it became apparent in the Ted Cruz and Beto race in 2018, as well as the Kentucky governor's race with Matt Bevins. We saw significant anomalies in those races, and that's kind of the experience or our background working with this system. And I would tell you, as an unconventional warfare information operations, information warfare specialist, the American populace is facing an unconventional warfare scenario, and this is information warfare. The voting systems in the U.S. and Arizona, Dominion, and several of the other machines were built to be manipulated. And as the mayor said, they've been used in elections around the world with questionable results. And we believe that these same questionable results are present in this election. Again, my background as an information warfare officer is how to get in and corrupt these machines to conduct strategic influence operations. How do I get the enemy or a targeted population in a foreign country to think and act a certain way? These machines have multiple points of injection that are vulnerable, everywhere from the server level, where passwords, accesses are posted for the dark web for any hacker to get in and access them. And what they can do at the far right limit is download CSV files or like an Excel spreadsheet, change the columns, and re-upload them. And that can be done at the server level. At the operator level, if there's software, it can be corrupted, it can be manipulated with a device that is as small and as simple as a USB device, which these machines are booted up and run off of. So the little bit of history, and I can show you some charts on the DNA of these machines, but the common software goes back to SGO Smartmatic. As the mayor mentioned, they sold Sequoia voting systems to Dominion in 2010, and then Diebold spun off the Premier election system to Dominion as a result of the antitrust concerns. I believe that was also in 2010. So the bottom line is that these systems all have similar code and similar functions, and it's displayed in their operator's manual. So, I know it's kind of been, in the press, it's kind of been poo-pooed that, this doesn't go back to Hugo Chavez. But I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge, speaking with two of Hugo Chavez's family members, that in the Maduro election, when the populist uprising threatened Venezuela's totalitarian leadership, that Hugo Chavez's family members said that don't worry, that it's guaranteed that their father invested the money to build the SGO voting machine system. So in a nutshell, these systems are not what you've been told, if you've been told anything. They are connected to the internet. There is no transparency of how the voter information is processed, moved, and stored. And as a matter of fact, these companies have refused to allow any type of inspection into their code, and they always decry, it's our IP, it's IP protection. But with the declaration, I believe, with Jay Johnson, was our Secretary of Homeland Security. He declared that the national election system was national critical infrastructure. So there is, I think, reason for us to understand the code and how these machines function and how they use our votes and process our votes. The voting record is able to be modified, deleted, adjusted by administrators or outside threats, and those are also explained in the user's manual. Operators can assign votes for write-in votes, blank or error ballots in large numbers. So all of these votes, they could get put into a batch file, and then the administrator of that voting or tabulation system can say, okay, there's 8,000 votes in this batch file, or there's 5,000 votes in this batch file, and they can say, well, I think, this batch will just make this go to this candidate. And they have that they have that authority in the user's manual to do that. Our team is not the only team that's working on this. There are literally hundreds of other small cyber teams that have weighed in on this. There are tons of statisticians. You'll hear from some of your Arizona citizens today, but we've been working in several states looking at these anomalies. But it's not a secret. I mean, DEF CON last year, I think the hacking teams broke in and manipulated these machines in under 2 minutes. So it can be done, it's easy, and there are very little security. So they can be hacked to manipulate votes. One of our white hat hackers discovered a malware on the server. It's called the Q-Snatch, that basically records login credentials and passwords. So if someone in Philadelphia, or someone in Maricopa County, or someone in Antrim, Michigan logged in, that malware will grab their username and password. And so you can log in. If you got access to the backside of that malware, you can log in wherever you are in the world to Maricopa County to manipulate. So
Colonel?
there's multiple
Colonel,
ways.
just interrupt you a second.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so we get the point of this clear. You actually examined one of the machines, and you were actually able to see very, very clear changes in vote in the machine, correct?
Correct, in Michigan.
And it was down ballot changes. How many?
Correct. So the down ballot looks, it was for, there were changes in the election day vote on 11/3 to the recount vote on 11/6. Say for example, the school board, one lady on the election day received 519 votes, and this was a very small precinct. In the post recount, they went from 592 to 852. The total votes went from 1068 to 1810, and the write-in vote jumped from 24 to 112. There was another proposition on a state proposal that jumped significantly from 700 votes on election day up to 1083 on the recount. So there are a lot of variabilities, and what we believe this is due to is the USB drive that was used in the election day versus the post-election recount.
Well, this proposition, when I see, I think we should give them a copy of this, make this available to them, because it shows on the day of the election, this is a proposition about the use of future revenues generated from oil and gas bonuses. And I take it was fairly controversial. So the first vote was 774 for, 508 against. The second vote was 1083 for and 206 against. Quite a difference. Now, how did that difference come about? How do you accomplish that difference? How does the machine change from after the votes are cast? What does the machine remember other votes?
So there's a card that stores the votes, and it's run against the algorithm that's put on the USB card into the actual machine and the tabulator, and that difference was basically the tabulation algorithm.
Why, excuse me for my ignorance, but why would you put an algorithm in if you have a vote that's 774 to 508?
That's
Why wouldn't you just look and see, was that the correct vote? Why do you put an algorithm in which is introducing an outside force to what should be an internal process?
to shift things how you like them. When you look at moving these algorithms around through the different precincts, you can achieve quite a number of aggregate ballot shifts. So this was one instance and one recount and one small.
So when they looked at the machine on election day, it was 774 to 508. When they looked at it again on the recount 3 days later, it was 1,083 to 206. Is that right?
Correct.
And that happens because of an algorithm, not because anybody changed their vote.
The elections clerk did write an affidavit, and they basically said that we followed all the procedures on election day as well as a recount, and these were the results that the election clerk.
We're also
posts
going to
over the
submit
account.
this study. It's quite complicated. I fell asleep last night reading it and had dreams about internet surveillance and all kinds of things. I propose getting an expert to look it over, but it shows exactly what the colonel is saying, that these machines should not be voting machines because anybody can communicate. It's like having an open computer. Anybody can communicate with them and do whatever they want with it. So we'll submit this and this to you that shows you that, that they can be changed, that they were changed, and then exactly how you can do it. Now, we know we're not saying it about any of the machines in Maricopa County, but we haven't seen the machines in Maricopa County, nor have you. This evidence is being submitted to dispute the lies that Dominion and Smartmatic are putting out, which is their machines are perfect, their machines can't be tampered with, their machines are tamper-proof. The reality is their machines are just the opposite. They're completely vulnerable. Is that right, Colonel?
And if you look up on the screen, that's exactly what, let me see if I can, do I need to put this at full screen or is it a better
I
view?
think you need to explain it.
So this is a Spiderfoot reconnaissance tool that looked at DominionVoting.com network that was analyzed on November 3rd. And basically this shows vulnerabilities, it shows volumetric internet traffic, the raw data, it shows all of the web servers, physical coordinates, all the vulnerabilities that are associated with the server. But basically, it does show that this was connected to the internet on voting day, and the volume of traffic was significant, and the vulnerabilities there are plenty of vulnerabilities that hackers could penetrate the system.
Can you tell if some of those communications went outside the United States?
We did observe packet traffic that were going from the U.S. Now, we don't know if it was specifically Dominion traffic going, but to a server in Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt, Germany.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
And who has it?
Could, Colonel Waldron, could you just take a moment and explain packet traffic? Because there's probably a lot of folks who are not sure what that is.
So it's bits of information that are sent over the internet from in internet protocol from one point to another.
Thank you.
And what's in Frankfurt, Germany that would be of interest?
Well, we looked prior to the election, one of our white hat hackers, and found that there was traffic in a Seidel server. Seidel is one of the companies, and I can show you we mentioned before the interconnectedness. Not that one. The interconnectedness of these companies. So this is sort of a historical link to all the voting companies, and we got Smartmatic in the middle. It's a licensor to Dominion Voting Systems. Seidel runs election night reporting through SOE software and Clarity Elections over here. And Clarity Elections is, if you click up on a lot of the county and Secretary of State voting systems, it'll pop up as property of Clarity Elections. So it doesn't really belong to the county, it really belongs to Clarity Elections.
So, I mean, just to make it simple, a Dominion machine that I go in and vote, it is susceptible to easily outside, or by them in particular,
By an
or to the Dominion machine.
Your vote is not as secure as your Venmo account.
Pardon me, say that one more time.
Your vote is not as secure as your Venmo account.
Can you think of any reason why, any good reasons?
They have a strong lobby. They work with the government, they work with state government agencies, and they've got the infrastructure to sell their services.
What could go wrong?
Can you now look at, in reference to Arizona, the analysis you did of the vote in Maricopa and Pima counties that was reported. It's the Arizona fixing the vote chart.
So we noticed a difference in Arizona versus the other states. Our team mostly focused on what we call spike analysis, which were an electronic inject of a lot of votes, and where the number of votes that were injected in a specific time period exceeded the ability of the scanners to process ballots and upload. So basically, it's a signal of a potential anomaly where we would want to go in and do forensic analysis on the ballots that were processed in those batches to analyze. The way that these systems work is that you can run votes in, run votes in, run votes in, and if you get write-in ballots or error ballots, it just accumulates them into a batch file. And there may be, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 votes in this batch file, and then the administrator or the tabulator can just go, okay, I'm ready to process batch file, bloop, and they send it, and then it records those votes. In the user's manual, there's ways that it shows that the administrator can vote that batch, in a 80%, 20%, 100%, however the administrator chooses, and that basically is a tool to allow them to move votes through the system faster. So Arizona was a little bit different. It had a pretty strong rise right up at the front, the first part of voting day, whereas the other states, and I can show you those, have a gradual increase in votes. And this may have been due to the fact that Arizona allowed early counting and tabulation, so those batch files could have been dropped in right away. But this injection spike at 8:06:40 p.m., and this is adjusted from Zulu time, so this is 143,100 votes that were injected. That was in excess of what the machines could have processed. The real reason that we believe that this spike was a little bit of an anomaly, and should I show the email that was sent to the Arizona legislature?
You have the floor, sir.
Say again?
Yes.
So this was an anonymous email that was sent to all members of the Arizona legislature, and it was also sent to DOJ. This individual sent the email, wanted to remain anonymous, but had enough concern that he sent this to the criminal division of U.S. Department of Justice. He did not want to be included in the investigation, but the information that they recorded was what we would like the opportunity to investigate on your behalf, or a forensics team of your choosing. It doesn't matter to us, but it says that please be advised that Pima County Recorder, located at 240 North Stone Avenue, Tucson, Arizona, in Pima County, Arizona, and the Democratic Party added fraud votes in the initial count to the vote by mail totals released at 8 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020. So this coincides with what we observed in the data analytics at that spike. We weren't aware of this email until after the fact. 35,000 fraud votes added to each Democratic candidate's vote totals. Candidates impacted include county, state, and federal election candidates. Through the utilization of the automated ballot count machines in Pima County elections, which were not Dominion, but they had the same pretty much functionality. My understanding is that 35,000 was embedded into each Democrat vote totals. Below are the meeting notes. In a meeting I was invited to by the Democrat Party in Pima County, Arizona on September 10th, 2020, no phones or recording devices were allowed. A presentation was given including detailed plans to embed 35,000 in a spread configured distribution to each Democrat candidate's vote totals. When I asked how in the world that will 35,000 votes be kept hidden from being discovered, it was stated that spread distribution will be embedded across the total registered voter range and will not exceed the registered vote count. And the 35,000 was determined allowable for Pima County based on our county registered vote count. It was also stated that total voter turnout versus total registered voters determine how many votes we can embed. This embedding will auto-adjust based on voter turnout. Because the embed votes are distributed sporadically, all embedded votes will not be found. If audited, because the embeds are in groups of approximately 1,000. This is so county recorder can declare an oversight issue or error, as groups of 1,000 is a normal and acceptable error. So if you believe that your one vote counts for one vote, this is Maricopa County's embed totals will be substantially higher than Pima due to embeds being calculated based on the total number of registered voters. When I asked, has this ever been tested and how do we know it works? The response was yes. This has been tested and has shown significant success in Arizona judicial retention elections since 2014. Even undetectable in post-audits, because no candidate will spend the kind of funds needed to audit and contact voters to verify votes in the full potential of total registered voters, which is more than 500,000 registered voters. This year, our Secretary of State has removed precinct level detail for election night releases so candidates can't see precinct overvotes. This is what I have for the meeting. Just thought I'd report this. Not sure if you can do anything since I was unable to have a recording device in the meeting. Again, we hope this individual would come forward and issue this as an affidavit, but this is significant, and we also noted that the reporting numbers from Pima and Maricopa County merged election day votes with write-in votes with absentee ballots, so there's no way to, in the publicly available data, to parse those votes into the segments. And I believe we noted in the piece of information that was provided to you that Maricopa County had 1.9 million mail-in ballot requests. So, and those, there was a Maricopa County official on videotape that did say that they did not validate the signatures on the write-in ballots this year. So that's a 1.9 million vote fraud potential, even if it's 0.1% of the vote. There's a lot of room for error.
Could we just review that quickly for 1 second so we get it right?
Ladies and gentlemen, please, I know that you're passionate about this, but there are a lot of people in this world that want to hear this, and if we can't hear the witnesses over remarks, that deprives people of hearing the truth.
So what I take from your testimony, Colonel, is that 35,000 votes were embedded for each Democratic candidate in Pima County.
Correct. That is the allegation of this email.
The allegation by the gentleman who hasn't given us an affidavit.
Correct.
That they were distributed based on the voter turnout carefully so they wouldn't look suspicious.
That's correct.
And that's essentially what the Dominion, Smartmatic, that's essentially their modus operandi, right?
That's their
They don't just put
CTP.
in 10,000 votes, they put it in carefully so it's hard to detect.
They move the algorithms around to different precincts until they get the aggregate number that they want and need, and then they shift the algorithms to other precincts.
Did the Democratic candidates who got the benefit of those 35,000 false votes include Biden and Harris?
According to this email, it was all local and federal races.
So if that were true, then the result of the election is totally opposite the one that they're so anxious to certify. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now,
and again, this
you would need the
email was sent to every Arizona legislature that I'm.
Now, we don't know if the gentleman is telling the truth or not,
Correct.
but would it be possible, if you had the machines in Pima County, to be able to see if there's evidence of this?
In order to do that, there would have to be a full forensic audit from the USB that drives the voting, to the PCM CIA cards, to the tabulators, to the routers.
Well, I'm just
to the
asking,
servers.
could it be done if you had the
Yes.
will to
Yes,
do
sir.
it?
Yes, sir.
If you wanted to find out if the vote in Pima County were honest or not, wouldn't you do it?
Yes, sir.
And without doing it, you really have no idea.
That's correct.
And the machines used in Pima County are different, but are they that much more secure?
These systems, they all have similar vulnerabilities. Our team focused on Dominion. Our partner team focused on ES&S, and they're very similar as far as vulnerabilities.
Now, did he say anything that suggests the same thing happened in Maricopa County?
This gentleman appeared to be an IT specialist in Pima County. So he only wrote allegedly to what he observed.
And do we have any knowledge that anyone from the state of Arizona attempted to look for him?
I believe the legislators, some of the legislators did try to locate this gentleman.
Anybody from law enforcement?
Not that I'm aware of. But I'm not law enforcement, so I'm not sure.
But even if you can't find him, you could determine the validity of this, or maybe determine the validity of this by doing a forensic audit.
Correct.
There's an available scientific tool that would tell you, I mean, did Biden get 35,000 phony votes?
That's correct.
And it's not being utilized, as far as you know, by the state of Arizona.
Pima County, I believe the total vote total was less than a million in Pima County. So it would be possible and feasible to do a full audit, a ballot audit. And I also was informed that your state, through the Counterterrorism Information Center and the DPS here in Arizona, do have the capability to analyze and validate ballots for ink consistency. So if there were mass-produced ballots in Maricopa County that were stuffed, your DPS, I've been informed, has the capability to analyze those ballots for paper consistency and ink consistency. So if there were mass-produced ballots, you could determine that on your own.
Excuse me, Colonel Waldron. So I think what you're saying, and I'm going to kind of repeat this back to you, these might be pre-printed ballots to simply move through the system. Is that what you're suggesting?
There are indications, we have affidavits from Pennsylvania that there were ballots that were pre-positioned in a bobtail trailer, a tractor trailer truck.
Okay.
And that these ballots were, the thought was that this was a cache that they could go and grab the amount of ballots they needed and take them to the specific tabulation centers. And that's an affidavit that's from our Pennsylvania work. This
Colonel,
TTP is standard.
so repeat one more time the piece of information that I think people were shocked about, because it is hard to believe. Did you say that a Pima County official said that they didn't validate any of the mail-in votes?
That was Maricopa.
Maricopa,
They didn't
sorry.
validate the signature. They didn't validate the signatures on the mail-in ballots.
And that's 1.9 million.
Correct.
And do we know who that is?
I would have to get the video.
Well, could you get it for us?
Oh, yes, sir.
No, you don't have to do it right now, but before the end of the hearing? That would render every one of the 1.9 million votes absolutely never checked for fraud, deceit, mistake. And if they're mail-in votes, that can't be done now. They've been separated from the envelope.
Correct.
That would indicate,
The
so those
validity
are
of the
basically
individual
1.9 million votes that are illegal votes.
or that had the potential to be illegal votes that weren't validated. The signatures
But-
weren't
but-
validated.